Good morning, Little Masters, and welcome back to today's Tolkien Times. I'm the Man of the West, also from the Prancing Pony podcast. We're spending Third Age Thursdays this series in the poetry and songs from the Lord of the Rings. After spending 5 of the 6 weeks this series in Rivendell, we have finally left Elrond's homely house and are now in the long dark of Moria, where Gimli will share a bit of Dwarven verse with us. Today, we'll read the passage and poem itself and talk a bit about the structure of the poem and a bit of the compositional history of this song from the collected poems of J.R.R. Tolkien. Next week, we'll take a deeper dive and analyze the contents of the stanzas. First, let's lead into Gimli's chanting of the song before we get into the poem itself. The company spent that night in the great cavernous hall, huddled close together in a corner to escape the draught. There seemed to be a steady inflow of chill air through the eastern archway. All about them as they lay hung the darkness, hollow and immense, and they were oppressed by the loneliness and vastness of the dolven halls and endlessly branching stairs and passages. The wildest imaginings that dark rumor had ever suggested to the hobbits fell altogether short of the actual dread and wonder of Moria. "There must have been a mighty crowd of dwarves here at one time," said Sam, "and every one of them busier than badgers for 500 years to make all this, and most in hard rock, too. What did they do it all for? They didn't live in this darksome holes, surely." "These are not holes," said Gimli. "This is the great realm and city of the Dwarrodelf, and of old it was not darksome, but full of light and splendor, as is still remembered in our songs." He rose, and standing in the dark, he began to chant in a deep voice, while the echoes ran away into the roof. "The world was young, the mountains green. No stain yet on the moon was seen. No words were laid on stream or stone, when Durin woke and walked alone. He named the nameless hills and dells. He drank from yet untasted wells. He stooped and looked in mirror, and saw a crown of stars appear, as gems upon a silver thread, above the shadow of his head. The world was fair, the mountains tall, in elder days before the fall of mighty kings in Nargothrond and Gondolin, who now beyond the western seas have passed away. The world was fair in Durin's day. A king he was on carven throne in many-pillared halls of stone, with golden roof and silver floor and runes of power upon the door. The light of sun and star and moon and shining lamps of crystal hewn, undimmed by cloud or shade of night, there shone forever, fair and bright. There hammer on the anvil smote. There chisel clove and graver wrote. There forged was blade and bound was hilt. The delver mined, the mason built. There beryl, pearl, and opal pale, and metal wrought like fish's mail, buckler and corslet, axe and sword, and shining spears were laid in hoard. Unwearied then were Durin's folk. Beneath the mountains music woke. The harpers harped, the minstrels sang, and at the gates the trumpets rang. The world is gray, the mountains old. The forge's fire is ashen cold. No harp is rung, no hammer falls. The darkness dwells in Durin's halls. The shadow lies upon his tomb in Moria, in Khazad-dûm. But still the sunken stars appear in dark and windless Mirror. There lies his crown in water deep, till Durin wakes again from sleep. "I like that," said Sam. "I should like to learn it. In Moria, in Khazad-dûm. It makes the darkness seem heavier thinking of all those lamps. Are there piles of jewels and gold lying about here still?" Gimli was silent. Having sung his song, he would say no more. I absolutely relished being able to read this one. A bit surprising, as my preference is typically for alliterative verse, but the rhythm of this one and the ancientness, the millennia of history here, it's just wonderfully rich. You'll probably notice that the rhyming pattern is pretty straightforward. It's either AABB, AABBCC, or in a couple of the middle stanzas, AABBCCDD. Now, these rhyming couplets are different from the way that Tolkien initially conceived the poem, when he started writing it between late August 1940 and sometime in autumn of 1941, according to Skull and Hammond in the collected poems of J.R.R. Tolkien. Now, to give you an example, the first stanza of this version then read, "The world was young, the mountains green, no mark yet on the moon was seen, when Durin came and gave them name, to hills where nameless lands had been." Now, Christopher Tolkien included some of these in The Treason of Isengard and points out that they are 4-line stanzas with a rhyme scheme of AABA and with internal rhyme in the third line. Now here, when Durin came and gave them name, that's the third line, instead of the rhyming couplets as in the published version. Skull and Hammond suggest that it's likely that Tolkien composed these quatrains with some of his dwarf-centered hobbit poems in mind, such as Far Over the Misty Mountains Cold, as they have the same structure. As a reminder, I'm going to give you a couple of stanzas from that, where you can pick up that same AABA with an internal rhyme in that third line. Far over the misty mountains cold, to dungeons deep and caverns old, we must away ere break of day, to seek the pale enchanted gold. The dwarves of yore made mighty spells, while hammers fell like ringing bells, in places deep where dark things sleep, in hollow halls beneath the fells. It's fascinating that at first Tolkien composed this song of Durin with the exact same structure, but then changed it to rhyming couplets. Now next week, we're going to look at the dwarven history in the song itself. For now, though, folks, thank you for joining me for this week's Third Age Thursday. Stick around for more poetry tomorrow as I continue First Age Fridays, and I'll read through the Lay of Lathian. Check out patreon.com/Tolkien Times to learn how you can support the show, get an ad-free feed, join my content council, get a bonus episode every week, and more. If you're watching this on YouTube, please like and subscribe. Please follow or subscribe in your podcast apps and leave reviews wherever you might find the show. And follow @Tolkien Times on all your social media. Finally, as Faramir says, go with the goodwill of all good men.